Thank you, Wen, for that. I agree with everything you're saying, and I like how you bring back the founding fathers, and public education is something that is, you know, has been near and dear to their hearts and all our hearts forever. And my fear is, you know, looking into the future, if we don't continue to maintain and strive to provide the education system that we have built, that it's going to be a shell of a school, a shell of a ghost school, you know, a ghost town. And people won't come here for the schools, they'll come here for something else.
And people that are already here may leave.
And for sure that.
I just want to reiterate again, that this is not a one-year problem. You know, a third of the items on the savings is how I identified, they're not really savings, they're just delays. So, you know, there's not real savings, it's just like you're getting a new pair of shoes later, you're gonna still need shoes. All those things on that list have gotta happen. We're gonna be back next year, and those are gonna be on the list. And those things are not going away. And the issues that we have are not going away. It was like, we want to be in a position where we can talk about how do we make the schools better as we go forward. And, you know, and that's part of a multi-year conversation. And, you know, if we don't have a plan beyond this year, I think we're going to be in trouble.
One thing I want to add to that in terms of this not, you know, it's not a one-year solution. Because we receive so little from the state, though, next year, if we you know, receive the same amount that we do this year, let's say we were lucky enough to receive the same amount, not receive more cuts, then our increase would be, you know, our spending, our budget spending and impact to taxes would be minimal.
Yes.
So I think it's worth pointing out that this year, it would be a major expense. But next year, it will flatten out because, you know, assuming we don't receive another almost $1 million in cuts. But if that were the case, then there's nothing left to cut from the state.
So that's basically, there is still some to cut, but that's basically true. However, if we economize this year by putting off a bunch of things, they'll be back next year. So,
Yeah.
you know, that's a little pay me now, pay me later. And so if we take absorb the whole hit this year, yes, there's actually, we've been very good at keeping our budget, our expenses within a very narrow range. And that has, as a result, that has a narrow range of tax impact. And most of the tax impact that we've felt, both up and down, has to do with the state funding going up and down, not with our budget going up and down. Our budget has been in a very narrow range. But because we're trying to economize it, and we're still have things to do, like the facilities, this is more than a one-year conversation. I think we can minimize the tax impact and the swings in the tax rate substantially by absorbing it appropriately this year. But it doesn't. Whatever we push off this year will come back next year for the most part.
Right. Heather?
I have two questions. The first one is about the project, and I think one of our requests last week was to see, there was a number of $750,000 for that piece of the add-on wish list. But we had talked about maybe what would it be like, what would the cost be if the engineering firm and architectural firm came back with just the project, broke it down a little bit more, and maybe if the price tag wouldn't be $750,000, it might be more $300,000 to do the in-depth study of just the areas. Was that not?
I don't know, I don't think that Perry has had the time
Okay.
to do that. We discussed it today in our meeting this morning,
Okay.
and I mean, I actually think that it would be helpful, we don't have the luxury of time right now, but I think it'd be helpful for you all to be sure that you agree with that list. I mean, in other words, there are a number of things on that list.
Right.
If you ask me to rank order them, there are things that quickly shoot to the top and things that will end up being, so I mean, it would be nice to know that of those, say there are a dozen things, do you still want all of the a dozen of them in there, or is it 6? Because then the question of the people is, it's these 6, and what would it cost to not do the further analysis of our buildings, but just concentrate in on this short list?
Right.
I still think you're right, though. I think it's gonna, the number exact is 760,800. I think it's likely it would be coming in at 500 or something like that. That just, then we're right back where we were. I mean, or we've gone from 10% to 13%, and I mean, I just don't know what you want to do with that. But we could definitely, I guess I would just like to have you, maybe have Perry refresh for you what is on that list, if you want him to. We could ask him to do that, if let's say he wants to spend some time Thursday night, and say, which of those items remain, and then he could ask them, well, sharpen your pencil, please, and let us know what would be the new figure. But you wouldn't want to go through all that if you really weren't seriously going to consider dropping that into the budget.
But you had such a convincing speech at the beginning.
Well, I feel this should be something that, as another example of what the town could, if they wanted to, say, you know what, this is so important to our identity and our value, and that we're willing to.
I mean, I think it's worth the board and us having a conversation to say, because you're right, I think we dismissed it last week, and are we still dismissing it? Or do we think that it's worth having a conversation about it? Because it was brought up at the beginning of this meeting, and it is, it's a big issue, and
I don't think it was dismissed last week. I think some people really feel strongly about it, but I think, the charge for Howard was, it was not the top of the list of the items we identified. So I think what we need to do individually between now and Thursday is take everything in, and do we want to take time to ask Perry to go through that list? Do we want to take time on Thursday to go through the project and see if we can fit that in, knowing that either we're going to go up in percentage, or we're going to cut even more?
May I just put in?
Yeah.
The other thing that could happen, if what we heard from our lawyers, if I heard it correctly, that cost has to be in the school budget because it's schools, then is it possible the town fathers, the council would say, well, if we're going to add, let's pretend that it's a new number, it's 500,000. That if we're going to add that to your budget, then you need to take 500,000 somewhere else out of this budget in order for us to add that. It's kind of like the trading off, from this example, right? Would you be willing to do that? Because that would be even more positions. Correct? When you follow me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, no, I get
The
that,
answer to me is no.
and that's the conversation that I wanted to have. I
Right.
wanted that to be said, that if, yeah,
And I think it is a continuing problem. How do you fund significant one-time costs? Because they're always gonna have that kind of budget impact, and if you're always just naming the number, then you're always taking it out of somewhere else, and you really can't do that. It doesn't function that way. You've gotta be able to manage that over time somehow. And so that's how do we work with the town and the voters to do that? The budget situations that we've been in for the last several years have not allowed for that, and that's part of the reason why our buildings look the way they do.
We miss school because of lack of power and, yeah.
So so one thing that could happen would be that you would negotiate with the architects and engineers that, again, let's pretend the new number was 500,000. That you would negotiate with them that they would delay 400,000 of that until after the vote on a building project, and they would add that to the bond. Because then you bond that out,
Yeah.
and then it isn't a one-year
Right.
expense, it's amortized over 20 years. And then for them, it's a crapshoot. If a project fails, which if it's done well, it shouldn't, But if it did, you would probably have to agree that over time, you would reimburse them for some set amount of money. That's something else that could happen.
If they agreed,
Pardon me?
if they agreed.
Right, so then you would be raising, just again, pretending now, 100,000, not 760,800. And then they would basically be, you would add that cost to, say, to the overall bond that you're raising.
And that level of funding is the kind of thing that we've been able to handle through managing the unassigned funds account in the past years when it was much more significant, for example. But we're not in that situation currently.
But to pull that off by April 10th,
Right,
just seems,
right.
Unlikely.
Can I ask one more question? I had two. And forgive me if I don't know this, but I'm looking, Catherine might be the one, I don't know Howard, but I'm looking at this sheet,
Oh, yeah.
which I've become very familiar with, but in yellow and highlight, it shows the increase in the school budget, correct?
Yes.
Is what that is.
Yep.
And so we do have a jump from 2.4 to 3.5.
That is correct.
And I'm wondering if you can explain, if I keep hearing flat, 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 that's not exactly flat. Do you know what I'm?
Yes.
Yeah, so is it all based on the contracts?
Yeah, that's pretty much what that increase is
Okay.
based on all the bargaining agreements that we have. It's all staff and benefits.
but may I say, we also added positions, right, in the last year?
This budget that we have.
Oh, the
no,
budget, okay, I'm
Yeah,
talking about
that
last year, this year,
doesn't-
okay, yeah.
That doesn't include any new positions. It's
Mhm.
pretty much the bargaining agreements.
Mhm.
Based on my analysis, an increase for just the bargaining agreements was 4.4%. So there are some reductions in other areas to kind of help offset that. So technically, it's no increases in staff or anything like that, but I agree with you. When you say flat, people are gonna go, how come it's not a 0% increase?
Right.
But it's just the increases that are because of the bargaining agreements and things like that.
Thanks.
And as a reference point, our personnel costs are going up 4.4%. The towns are, as they were proposed, are going up 4.7%. Town is adding positions, we are not adding any positions, just as a reference point of how responsible, what level we're approaching our costs and personnel costs.
Okay, so are we done for tonight? Yes?
So I heard one thing you want us to have ready for you next week, I mean Thursday night, you mean Thursday night, correct? Yeah, I heard this, Catherine, did you get all that down that John asked that we come back?
Well, I would like John to clarify, because honestly, I'm not quite sure what he's looking for. You're looking at the reductions that Howard pointed out.
We had a starting budget number,
Mhm.
and we had talked about what we were adding to that, and then there was also some known savings. So that's sort of a new baseline.
Okay,
Right,
so
so
current budget.
Current budget, we know
known
there's
savings.
77,000 that was saved in PAS, and we
Yeah.
know there was the additional social worker added at the middle school.
But the social
Right.
worker, we may be able to take out of federal grants.
But whatever the net impact is in
Okay.
terms of that, what we decided on, that's fine. But what I'm saying is, these were known changes to the baseline budget.
Okay,
So before any of the, sit down today and look at the additional cuts, we sort of needed to get a new baseline number that flows through to tax impact.
okay, so we're not talking a large increase, then we're just talking about
Yeah,
like
just
pads and.
making the adjustments that, to get it was 10.8, what is it now with the new things that we've just said, yes, we know these savings are here, yes, we know these additional costs are here. So it's a new baseline.
Okay, so I need clarification on the additional costs.
Right.
Are there certain positions, because I was hearing that not all the positions that were discussed last time are really the ones we really want in the budget, so
Exactly, so we said the social worker, it seems to be clear, and maybe we'll be lucky and get a grant for that. The one that we talked about last time was the SRO officer, but now we're thinking about not including that, right? And the
So,
other
we
one,
should
and the
get
other,
some- yeah,
and the other two were the people at Pond Cove, I believe, right?
Two
The-
small items, yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
just-
lunch aid and ed tech at the high school.
Yeah, so I think it's down now to the social worker and the lunch aides and the,
I don't know that it is. I would poll the board and say that the board never felt that those were on equal footing with other things.
So we could just take a quick straw.
that's not what I'm saying. I think, last week, we said about these things on the wish list. Where, if we added them, what kind of savings could we pull out? Not that we're going to do it, but we're saying now, in addition to the cost of a social worker and the cost of the two smaller items, that would be whatever that totals, minus the savings from PAS. What is our new number?
Okay, and we are confirmed that we can take the social worker out of our federal special ed grant.
You
So-
can confirm
Yes,
that,
we
okay?
we
All right.
confirmed that today. So the only items we're talking about are the
The two small ones.
two small ones, and does the board want those two
But-
small ones added?
But if we know that those are items that you find interesting, but we feel that something that's on this list is more valuable than those, do we have permission to,
Yes,
Yes,
yes.
Yes.
absolutely.
okay, because
Yeah.
I'm not, okay.
I think,
That wasn't clear
John,
last time, is what I'm hearing from you, Howard.
Correct.
yeah, I think, John, what you were
John,
asking
yes.
for is the updated budget line item not including this.
Correct, correct. But there was strong feeling, and I was the one to check on the two larger items, which was the SRO, which we sort of talked about tonight, but we should take a sort of an official position on. And the other one was the social worker. And that sounds like it's coming from a different budget now, so that's in, but it's not necessarily increasing the budget.
That's right.
So should we take another straw poll? Right now, I'm sort of the feeling that we would like to ask the town if they will fund an SRO, and if not, we will not fund it this year. Is that the sense of the? Anyone who disagrees with that? So that's the sense of that. So there's, and then the additional items here, we would throw in with, you put them on the list for cuts or not cuts. And so we'll have a baseline that shows the 77,000. There's no additional cost that we're adding in because of the ability to grant fund that. And then have an additional list of cuts to compare to. So we'll have that new baseline and a reduced, a potentially reduced number.
So in the two additional things, it's an ed tech at the high school, again, I wasn't here.
There was a
the last meeting.
$16,000 item for lunch and recess aides, and the other one was a part-time ed tech at the high school.
So can I say one?
I'm sorry, were you gonna have a question about that, or were you just clarifying?
No, I guess I had, at one point, we had questions then, was there gonna be some other way of doing the lunch coverage for, I know we had funded it for this year, but kind of hoping that was just for this year, but clearly that maybe didn't pan out to.
Sure, do you want me to speak to that?
If you
So-
don't mind.
It would be teachers doing more duties, and then it would impact the planning time discussion,
Yeah,
so that would be the impact.
yeah.
Heather?
I just want to throw out that I'm not a fan of the comment bang for your buck. I don't want to put something on the list just because it looks cheaper. I just want to put that out there.
It's not why we fund things, we fund them for their value.
Yeah, I'll speak to the, since Jeff is here, do you mind explaining the position moving the ed tech to a full-time, moving someone from part-time to full-time? What would that be? Can you describe that a little bit more, please?
So that would, and sorry, I can't find the piece of paper.
No, I've got it.
37 under the handouts.
37 on the handouts. So that is, we have to expand, we have
Joe Wagner.
our academic skills program and to free up a teacher who has helped in the past with academic skills to do things that are more teacherly, specifically around video production. That's what that is. I'm almost positive that's what that is.
It says this is a position that would allow us to use Joe Wagner.
Correct. Joe is currently a part-time Ed Tech 3, provides academic skills. Last year, we had a teacher who's a part-time teacher work part-time as an Ed Tech 3 to expand our capacity for academic skills. And we find that there's a higher use for her time, specifically around tapping her skills, working with students with video production, which happens to be an area of expertise. And I would say the lunch aids are more important, if you had to ask me. But that's what that is. That's what that is. It's a valuable.
I have a question for Catherine. I know the 8,411, that does not include the benefits, right?
Excuse me, which section?
On the same section, same position, does that include the benefits of the person as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
What minimal benefits there would be, yes.
That's a question.
Yeah.
For Thursday night, are you saying that you want to have identified these positions that are on this list? If so, we need to talk to people before Thursday night. I mean, did you want to get to that detail? Do you want to?
No,
Okay.
I do not.
I do
I'm
not
not-
either. I feel like the board needs to come with, that needs some time to think privately and come together on Thursday and say, what are we comfortable with in terms of just a number? No,
Okay.
we don't need specifics, I don't think. Does that sound fair,
Yes.
everybody? Yeah.
Okay.
Can I add one thing? I can quickly calculate how much it will help us with the removal of the PATH tuition and reducing the budget by the 77,326 makes our budget increase, instead of 3.5, it is 3.2%. And the tax increase goes down to 10.4%, just to let you know.
It's amazing that that can make such a difference, like, yeah,
So,
thank you.
You're welcome.
So everybody cross your fingers for those health insurance.
Exactly. Light candles.
Before we go, may I just add one thing? I do not want to minimize the impact that the lunch aids probably have made in the building at Pond Cove this year for the students and for the teachers' ability to have their planning time. This is something that I have learned about, worked on, thought about, and I believe is incredibly important. And so I would like to, and I appreciate where, you're saying what it means. And what I would like to offer is that if those positions didn't make it in, if we could reach out to the parents' associations, if we could find other creative ways, other solutions to protect that planning time, I would love for everybody in this room to do that. Because it's something that has been on the top of the teachers' list at Pond Cove for several years. And we're finally getting somewhere positive. So my wish is that, number one, they understand that the board hears that. And number two, that if those positions aren't funded, that there is a commitment from administrators and board members and community members to find a way to help solve that problem. And I know it doesn't seem like a huge amount of money, but every little bit adds up. And then on the other side, there's a big impact. So I understand that.
I think that's it then, for sure this time.
For real.
Okay.